Emily stood at the gates of Nathaniel's mansion, her heart pounding in her chest. The grand entrance loomed before her like a castle from a fairy tale, its towering columns and intricate stonework both awe-inspiring and intimidating. She adjusted the strap of her bag, her fingers trembling slightly as she took a deep breath, summoning the courage to step into a world that felt utterly foreign to her. It wasn't just the opulence that overwhelmed her. It was the weight of expectation that pressed down on her shoulders. She was here to care for a man who had everything yet seemed to be ensnared in a prison of his own making. As she approached the door, the sound of her footsteps echoed on the marble floor, a stark contrast to the silence that enveloped the mansion. The air was thick with an unspoken tension, as if the walls themselves were holding their breath in anticipation. Emily hesitated for a moment, her hand hovering over the ornate doorbell, before finally pressing it. The chime echoed through the vast halls, a sonorous signal that she had arrived. A moment later, the door swung open, revealing a stern-looking housekeeper. "Miss Emily?" the woman asked, her tone brisk. Emily nodded, feeling a flush creep up her cheeks. "Yes, that's me. I'm here to care for Mr. Hawthorne." "Follow me," the housekeeper said curtly, turning on her heel and leading Emily into the depths of the mansion. As they walked, Emily's gaze flitted over the lavish decor. Gilded frames adorned the walls, and exquisite sculptures graced the corners of the expansive rooms. The luxury was almost suffocating, a stark contrast to the modest home she had grown up in. She felt like an intruder in a world where she did not belong. They arrived at a large sitting room, the sunlight streaming through the floor-to-ceiling windows and illuminating the space in a warm glow. In the center of the room sat Nathaniel Hawthorne, a handsome man in his early 30s, his striking features marred only by the wheelchair that confined him. His dark hair was tousled in a way that suggested he had once cared about his appearance, but now there was a certain neglect to his grooming. His piercing blue eyes, however, were the most captivating aspect of him, holding a depth of emotion that seemed to flicker just beneath the surface. "Mr. Hawthorne," the housekeeper announced, gesturing for Emily to step forward. Nathaniel's gaze flickered towards her, but he offered no greeting, his expression unreadable. Emily's stomach twisted with anxiety as she tried to hold his gaze, but he quickly looked away, his focus returning to the window, as if she were nothing more than a shadow passing through his life. "Your new carer," the housekeeper added, her voice lacking warmth. "I'll leave you two to get acquainted." With that, she turned on her heel and exited the room, leaving Emily alone with Nathaniel. The silence that followed was thick and uncomfortable, pressing down on her like a weight. Emily shifted her weight from one foot to the other, her heart racing. Hello, Mr. Hawthorne," she finally said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I'm Emily. I'll be here to help you with, well, whatever you need." She forced a smile, hoping to break the ice, but Nathaniel's eyes remained fixed on the horizon, unresponsive. For a moment, it felt as though time had frozen. Emily's cheeks burned with embarrassment, the silence stretching on until it became unbearable. "I understand that this might be a bit overwhelming," she added, trying to fill the void. "But I'm here to make things easier for you." Still, Nathaniel said nothing. The tension in the room was palpable, and Emily could feel the weight of his indifference pressing down on her. She took a step closer, her voice gaining a hint of determination. "I know you're going through a lot, and it's okay to feel. Do you always talk so much?" Nathaniel interrupted, his voice low and edged with irritation. Emily's heart sank at his words, and she quickly retreated, her confidence crumbling. "I'm sorry," she stammered, feeling her cheeks flush with humiliation. "I just thought I wanted to help." He turned to look at her then, his expression a mixture of annoyance and something else that Emily couldn't quite place. "Help? With what exactly?" "I don't need anyone's help." His words were cold, a stark reminder of the barriers he had built around himself. Emily swallowed hard, forcing back the disappointment that threatened to overwhelm her. "I understand," she replied quietly, trying to maintain her composure. "I'll just get started on your routine, then." She turned to the small table beside him, where a few personal items lay scattered: a sketchbook, a half-finished drawing, and a collection of pencils. As she began to organize the space, she felt Nathaniel's gaze on her, a scrutinizing weight that made her skin crawl. She concentrated on her tasks, trying to ignore the prickling sensation of his piercing eyes. The atmosphere was sterile, devoid of warmth, and she couldn't shake the feeling that she was intruding on something deeply personal. "Can you draw?" Nathaniel asked suddenly, breaking the silence. Emily looked up, surprised by the shift in his tone. "You're touching my things without permission." "I'm sorry," she replied quickly, her heart racing. "I thought." "You thought?" He interrupted again, his tone sharp. "I don't want my things to be moved around." She nodded, a lump forming in her throat. "I understand. I'll be more careful." For a moment, Nathaniel seemed to soften, his expression flickering with something that resembled vulnerability. But just as quickly, he masked it, the walls around him re-erecting with a resolute finality. Emily could sense the guarded nature behind his aloof facade, and it intrigued her. Beneath the cold exterior, she felt an undercurrent of emotion that was hard to ignore. As she continued her tasks, Emily couldn't help but steal glances at Nathaniel. There was a sadness in his eyes that spoke of a past filled with untold stories and unhealed wounds. Despite the sterile environment, she sensed a complexity within him that piqued her curiosity. What had turned such a handsome man into a figure of isolation? What secrets lay hidden behind those blue eyes? "Why did you take this job?" Nathaniel asked unexpectedly, his voice cutting through her thoughts. Emily hesitated, taken aback by the sudden inquiry. "I needed a job, and I thought I could help someone," she replied slowly, searching for the right words. "I know it's not easy to have someone new in your life." "Help," he scoffed, his eyebrow raised. "You think you can help me?" "I don't know," she admitted, her voice trembling slightly. "But I want to try." Nathaniel's gaze softened for just a brief moment, a flicker of something unguarded crossing his features. But it vanished as quickly as it had appeared, replaced by the familiar coldness that had defined their interaction thus far. He turned away from her once more, staring out the window with an expression that seemed to convey a world of pain, and Emily felt a pang of sympathy for him. The minutes stretched on in silence, as Emily worked to familiarize herself with Nathaniel's living space. The room, though beautiful, felt haunted, filled with echoes of a life once vibrant. She glanced at the sketches scattered around, each one a glimpse into Nathaniel's soul, revealing layers of complexity that intrigued her even further. "Do you enjoy art?" she ventured, hoping to draw him out, to connect in some way. He glanced at her, his expression unreadable. "Art was part of my life before this." He gestured vaguely to the wheelchair, the frustration evident in his voice. "Now it's just a reminder of what I've lost." Emily's heart ached at his words. "I'm sure you still have a talent for it," she said softly. "Maybe you could teach me." "Teach you?" he said, incredulous. "I have no interest in teaching anyone anything." "Not yet, perhaps," she replied, a small smile breaking through her uncertainty. "But you never know. Sometimes all it takes is a little encouragement." Nathaniel looked at her for a long moment, and for the first time, she thought she saw a flicker of interest in his eyes. But it vanished just as quickly, and he turned his gaze back to the window, closing himself off once more. As the sun dipped lower in the sky, casting a warm glow across the room, Emily couldn't help but feel a sense of resignation settle over her. She was determined to break through Nathaniel's icy exterior, but she knew it wouldn't be easy. The walls he had built around himself were thick and fortified, and the shadows of his past loomed large. But as she continued her duties, Emily couldn't shake the feeling that beneath the coldness lay a man longing to be seen, to be understood. And perhaps, just perhaps, she could be the one to help him find his way back to the light. Days passed in a rhythm that became almost soothing for Emily as she settled into her role in Nathaniel's mansion. What had initially felt like an overwhelming task slowly morphed into a familiar routine. Each morning, she would arrive to the scent of fresh coffee lingering in the air, a comforting reminder of the new day ahead. As she entered the grand foyer, the sunlight streamed through the high windows, casting intricate patterns on the polished marble floor. The mansion, with its opulent decor, felt less intimidating with each visit, and Emily began to feel a sense of belonging, even if it was just a sliver. Her interactions with Nathaniel were still laced with an undercurrent of tension. He remained a man of few words, his sharp gaze often hidden behind the veil of his aloofness. However, Emily's curiosity about him grew with each passing day. She had discovered his passion for art, evident in the paintings that adorned the walls of his home. The canvases depicted vibrant landscapes, abstract forms, and portraits that seemed to tell stories of their own. Emily would often pause before them, allowing herself to be enveloped by the emotions they evoked. One afternoon, as she carefully dusted the frames, she caught Nathaniel watching her. His eyes, usually so guarded, held a flicker of something. Admiration, perhaps? She felt a rush of warmth spread through her. It was a moment of connection, fleeting yet profound, that ignited a spark of hope within her heart. Emily turned to him, her voice barely above a whisper. "You have a remarkable collection, Nathaniel. Each piece tells a story." He shifted slightly in his wheelchair, his expression unreadable. "Art has a way of capturing what words cannot," he replied, his voice steady yet distant. "It is both a refuge and a reminder of what has been lost." Emily felt the weight of his words. There was more to Nathaniel than his cold exterior suggested. She sensed a depth of emotion that lay just beneath the surface, waiting for the right moment to surface. "Do you paint?" she asked, genuinely intrigued. He hesitated, the shadows of his past flickering across his features. "I did," he admitted finally. "But that part of my life, it feels like a distant memory now." The conversation hung in the air, heavy with unspoken sentiments. Emily wanted to ask him more, to delve deeper into the man behind the wheelchair, but she sensed the walls he had built around himself were formidable. So, she continued her routine, allowing her curiosity to simmer beneath the surface. One particularly warm afternoon, Emily was filling Nathaniel's sketchbook with fresh pages, hoping to encourage him to draw again. She carefully placed the book on his lap, her fingers brushing against his as she did so. She felt a jolt of electricity at the contact, and Nathaniel's gaze flickered to her, a hint of surprise in his eyes. She quickly withdrew her hand, a flush creeping up her cheeks. "I thought you might want to start sketching again," she said, trying to mask her embarrassment. "Perhaps," he replied, his lips curving into a faint smile. It was a small gesture, yet it transformed his entire countenance, illuminating the shadows in his eyes. Emily's heart raced. She felt a flicker of hope ignite within her. Maybe, just maybe, there was a chance for something more between them. However, that hope was soon put to the test. Later that day, as she was refilling his glass with water, her hand slipped, sending the liquid cascading over Nathaniel's sketchbook. Panic surged through her as she gasped. "Oh no, I'm so sorry." She hurried to grab a cloth, her heart racing at the thought of damaging something so personal. Nathaniel's expression shifted from surprise to amusement, a rare spark of warmth flashing across his features. "It's just water, Emily," he said, chuckling softly. "I have more of those books than I need." Emily looked up, disbelief etched on her face. "You're not angry?" He shook his head, his smile widening. "Angry? No. It's refreshing to see someone so flustered over a simple mistake." She bit her lip, a mix of relief and embarrassment washing over her. "I just wanted to take care of your things. They're important to you." "Perhaps you care too much," he replied, a teasing lilt in his voice. "But that's not a bad trait." The exchange lingered in the air, a fragile thread of connection weaving between them. Emily's heart swelled at the prospect of breaking through Nathaniel's icy exterior. She felt a thrill at the thought that he might actually be warming to her, and with it came a flood of emotions she hadn't anticipated. As the days turned into weeks, Emily found herself looking forward to their interactions more than she had thought possible. Each morning, she would enter the mansion with a sense of eager anticipation, ready to embrace whatever small moments of connection arose. She began to notice subtle changes in Nathaniel's demeanor, the softness in his gaze when he spoke to her, and the way he seemed to lean in during their conversations. "What are you thinking about?" he asked one day, breaking her from a reverie. "Just wondering about your art," she replied, a shy smile playing on her lips. "Do you have a favorite piece?" Nathaniel pondered for a moment, his brow furrowing in thought. "There's a painting of a stormy sea," he said finally, his voice laced with nostalgia. "The waves crash against the rocks, wild and untamed. It reminds me of a time when I felt free." "Free?" Emily echoed, her curiosity piqued. "What was it like?" He studied her for a moment, as if weighing the trust he placed in her. "It was before everything changed," he said slowly. "Before I became this." He gestured to his wheelchair, a shadow of sorrow crossing his features. Emily felt a pang of empathy for him. "You're still here, Nathaniel. You're still you, even if things are different." His gaze softened, and for a heartbeat, she thought she saw a glimpse of vulnerability in his eyes. "You speak as if you understand." "Most don't. I try to," Emily replied, her voice steady. "I want to understand you." The moment hung delicately between them, charged with unspoken sentiments. Nathaniel's expression shifted, a flicker of something unnameable dancing in his eyes. "Perhaps you're right," he said softly, almost to himself. "Perhaps there is more to be understood." In that brief exchange, Emily felt the world around them fade away. The grand mansion, the expensive furnishings, even the barriers that had once separated them. All that existed was the moment, the connection that was blossoming like a fragile flower in the midst of winter. Yet, with every flicker of hope came the weight of reality. Emily was acutely aware of the boundaries that existed between them, the social chasm widened by wealth and circumstance. Still, she couldn't help but dream of what could be, of a world where their lives intertwined without the constraints of status or expectation. As she continued her duties, the anticipation of their next encounter lingered in her mind. Each day was a new canvas, waiting for the strokes of connection and understanding that would fill it. And in the quiet corners of her heart, she held on to the hope that one day Nathaniel would let her in completely, revealing the depths of his soul that she sensed lay just beneath the surface. As the days turned into weeks, the atmosphere within the pristine walls of Nathaniel's mansion shifted subtly. Emily, immersed in her routine, began to perceive the nuances of Nathaniel's character beneath his guarded exterior. The more time she spent with him, the more she noticed the delicate interplay of emotions that flickered behind his blue eyes, a depth that hinted at stories untold. One afternoon, as the golden rays of sunlight filtered through the grand windows of the drawing room, casting intricate patterns across the polished wooden floor, Emily found herself tidying up the array of art supplies that cluttered Nathaniel's workspace. Brushes of various sizes, tubes of paint, and crumpled sketches lay scattered about, the remnants of his creative pursuits. "Do you always work in such chaos?" she teased lightly, glancing over her shoulder at him, a smile dancing on her lips. Nathaniel looked up from his wheelchair, his expression momentarily flickering between annoyance and amusement. "It's called artistic freedom, Emily. You wouldn't understand," he replied, a hint of mock indignation lacing his voice. Emily chuckled softly, her heart warming at the rare glimpse of banter. "I might surprise you. I've been known to dabble in a bit of chaos myself." A silence fell between them, comfortable yet charged. Nathaniel's gaze drifted to the window, his brow furrowing as if lost in thought. There was a time when I found joy in this chaos," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "Before, everything changed." Emily's heart ached at the vulnerability in his tone. She put down the brushes and approached him, her curiosity piqued. "What do you mean? What changed?" He hesitated, the shadows of his past dancing across his face. "Life has a way of taking from you what you cherish the most. One moment, you're flying high, and the next, you're grounded." Emily nodded, sensing a heaviness in his words. "If you're comfortable sharing, I'm here to listen." Nathaniel's gaze flickered back to hers, a flicker of surprise mingling with caution. "It's not a pretty story, Emily. It involves loss, regret, and a moment of sheer recklessness. Sometimes, the things that hurt us the most can also lead to healing," she offered gently, her heart pounding as she leaned closer, wanting desperately to reach the part of him that remained hidden. He sighed deeply, the sound heavy with unspoken burdens. "I was in a car accident years ago. A reckless decision made in haste. I lost control, and in the process I lost everything." Emily's breath caught in her throat. "Everything?" He nodded slowly, his eyes clouded with pain. "My mobility, my career, and my family. They never looked at me the same way again. I became a burden, a reminder of what could have been." "I'm so sorry," she said softly, her heart aching for him. "But you're not a burden, Nathaniel. You're so much more than that." He met her gaze, the intensity of his blue eyes searching hers for sincerity. "You don't know me, Emily. You see a man in a wheelchair, but I'm not the man I used to be." "True," she replied, her voice steady. "But perhaps you can be something new, something different. You're still capable of creating beauty, of inspiring others." "Beauty?" He scoffed lightly, but there was no malice in his tone. "You speak of it so freely, yet I feel like a ghost of my former self. Maybe you need to rediscover who that person is," she urged, her determination shining through. "You can paint a new narrative, Nathaniel." He stared at her, an unreadable expression on his face. "You have a way of seeing the world, don't you?" "I try," Emily said with a smile, a warmth blooming in her chest. "I believe we all have the power to redefine our stories." As the weight of their conversation lingered in the air, Emily sensed a shift within him. The walls he had erected began to tremble, and for the first time, she saw a flicker of hope ignite behind his eyes. Days passed, and with each exchange, Nathaniel's barriers started to crack. He began to share more about his life before the accident, recounting tales of his childhood, the thrill of the art world, and the family he once had. With every story, Emily felt herself drawn deeper into the complexities of his existence, the layers of grief and resilience that shaped him. One evening, as they sat together in the drawing room, the sun setting behind the hills, casting a golden hue over everything, Nathaniel spoke of his love for painting. "Art was my escape," he said, his voice quieter than usual. "It was a way to express what I couldn't say." "Why don't you paint anymore?" Emily asked, her heart heavy at the thought of his lost passion. "I lost my muse," he replied, a shadow crossing his features. "When everything fell apart, so did my inspiration." "Perhaps your muse is still within you, waiting for the right moment to emerge," she suggested, her voice filled with encouragement. Nathaniel glanced at her, surprise mingling with something deeper. "You really believe that?" "I do," she affirmed, leaning forward. "You have so much to offer, Nathaniel. You just need to give yourself the chance to feel it again." He fell silent, contemplating her words. The atmosphere crackled with a tension that was both exhilarating and terrifying. As days turned into weeks, the invisible thread binding them grew stronger, and Emily found herself wrestling with emotions she had never anticipated. She was captivated by Nathaniel's intellect and the depth of his experiences. Yet she was also painfully aware of the lines that separated them. On a particularly quiet evening, as they sat across from each other, the air thick with unspoken words, Nathaniel suddenly reached out, his fingers brushing against hers. The connection was electric. Emily's heart raced, her breath hitching in her throat as she met his gaze, the intensity of the moment overwhelming. "Emily," he started, his voice trembling slightly, "there's something about you that changes everything for me." "What do you mean?" she whispered, her heart pounding as she held his gaze, every nerve ending alive with anticipation. "I've been locked away in this prison of my own making for too long," he confessed. "But you show me a glimpse of what it means to feel again." "Is that so wrong?" she asked softly, her voice barely above a whisper. "No," he replied, his expression earnest. "But it's complicated. I don't want to drag you into my darkness." "I'm not afraid of your darkness, Nathaniel," she said, her resolve firm. "I want to be here for you. I want to help you find your way back." The charged silence enveloped them, the world around them fading into nothingness. In that moment, Emily felt the weight of their shared vulnerability, the yearning that hung between them like a fragile thread, waiting to be severed or strengthened. As Nathaniel's thumb grazed her knuckles, the warmth of his touch sent shivers down her spine. She could see the battle within him, between the man he was and the man he could be. Their eyes locked, and for a heartbeat, the world outside ceased to exist, leaving only the two of them in that charged space, a realm where hope intertwined with fear and desire danced on the edge of reality. In that moment, Emily knew that whatever lay ahead, their journey together had only just begun. The afternoon sun filtered through the ornate windows of Nathaniel's study, casting intricate patterns of light and shadow across the polished wooden floor. Emily stood by the shelf lined with art books, her fingers brushing against the spines as she contemplated the weight of what she had recently uncovered about Nathaniel's family. The opulence of the mansion felt increasingly suffocating as the secrets she had begun to unearth loomed over her like a dark cloud. "Nathaniel," she called softly, turning her gaze towards him, where he sat in his wheelchair, a sketchbook resting on his lap. His dark hair fell slightly over his forehead, and for a moment, he appeared lost in thought, his usually icy blue eyes now reflecting a storm of emotions. He looked up, and the corners of his mouth turned downwards in a faint frown. "What is it, Emily?" His voice, though calm, carried an undercurrent of tension. "I've been thinking about your family," she replied cautiously, unsure of how to broach the subject. "About your brother." Nathaniel's expression hardened, and the atmosphere shifted. "I'd rather not discuss him," he said curtly, his gaze dropping back to the sketchbook. Emily felt a pang of disappointment but pressed on, driven by a mixture of compassion and curiosity. "I understand, but I can't help but wonder how you became estranged. It must have been difficult, especially with everything that happened." She took a tentative step closer, her heart racing as she braced herself for his reaction. Nathaniel's hand clenched around the edge of the sketchbook, and he sighed deeply. "Difficult doesn't begin to cover it. Oliver, he was always the golden child, the one everyone adored. I was just the sickly heir, a burden to the family." His voice cracked slightly, revealing a vulnerability that he rarely allowed to surface. Emily knelt beside him, her heart aching. "You're not a burden, Nathaniel. You're so much more than that. You have incredible talent and depth." She dared to place a hand on his arm, hoping to offer comfort. He looked at her, and for a fleeting moment, the wall he had built around himself seemed to waver. "You don't know the half of it," he whispered. "I want to," she insisted, her voice steady. "I want to understand you, to help you in any way I can." Nathaniel's expression shifted, a mixture of gratitude and fear flickering across his features. "You should be careful, Emily. There are things in my past that could change everything." "What do you mean?" she asked, her curiosity piqued. "What could possibly change how I see you?" He hesitated, the shadows of his past evident in the way his eyes darkened. "My family's legacy isn't just about wealth. It's built on betrayal and deceit. Oliver, he's not just my brother. He's also my greatest adversary." Emily felt a chill run down her spine. "What do you mean? Did something happen between you two?" Nathaniel's gaze turned distant, as if he were looking through her to a time long gone. There was an accident, one that left me like this. He gestured to his wheelchair, and the pain in his voice was palpable. I don't want to burden you with the details, but Oliver, he was involved. I was supposed to be the one in charge, yet he took everything from me. The weight of his words settled heavily in the room, and Emily felt her heart race. Do you think he— I don't know, he interrupted, his voice rising slightly in frustration. I've spent years trying to piece it all together, but the truth is buried beneath so many lies. Emily swallowed hard, the gravity of the situation dawning on her. Maybe we could look into it together. Find out what really happened. Nathaniel's eyes flickered with a mix of fear and something else. Hope? You don't know what you're asking, he warned gently. The deeper we dig, the more dangerous it becomes. I'm not afraid, she stated firmly, meeting his gaze with determination. I care about you, Nathaniel. I want to know the truth, for both of us. He studied her for a long moment, and she felt the tension between them shift, charged with unspoken emotions. I appreciate your concern, Emily, but this is my battle. I can't drag you into it. Then let me help you fight, she replied, her voice softening. You don't have to face this alone. His gaze softened, and for a moment, she saw the flicker of vulnerability in his expression. You're persistent, aren't you? He said, a hint of a smile playing at the corners of his lips. I have to be, she replied with a shy grin, her heart racing at the warmth in his expression. I want to know you, Nathaniel. All of you. Just as the air between them began to crackle with possibilities, the sound of the front door creaking open echoed through the grand hall, shattering the moment. Emily's heart sank slightly as she turned to see who had entered. Oliver, Nathaniel hissed under his breath, his expression hardening once more. Emily felt her stomach knot as Oliver strode into the room, exuding an air of confidence that contrasted sharply with Nathaniel's anxiety. He was tall, with an easy charm that made him instantly likable yet unsettling at the same time. Ah, Nathaniel, Oliver said, his voice smooth and patronizing. I see you're still holed up in this gloomy sanctuary. How delightful. What do you want, Oliver? Nathaniel snapped, his tone icy. I came to check on you, dear brother, Oliver replied, feigning concern. It's been too long since we've had a proper family reunion. Emily's instincts screamed at her to leave, to put distance between herself and the suffocating tension that enveloped the room. But she stood her ground, her eyes darting between the two brothers, sensing the brewing storm. Nathaniel's jaw clenched, and he shot Emily a warning glance. I don't need your concern, Oliver. I'm perfectly capable of taking care of myself. Oliver's smile widened, his eyes glinting with a predatory gleam. Of course you are, but I'm afraid you might need my help after all. With your condition, you never know what could happen. Get out, Nathaniel growled, his voice low and dangerous. Now, there's no need for hostility, Oliver replied, his tone unnaturally cheerful. I'm just looking out for your interests, especially with all that wealth you've accumulated. I wouldn't want anyone to take advantage of you, least of all your little caregiver. Emily's heart raced as she felt the implications of Oliver's words. She stepped forward, her voice steady. Nathaniel doesn't need your help, Oliver. He's more than capable of managing his own affairs. Oliver turned his gaze toward her, a sly smile creeping onto his face. And who might you be? The hired help? You really should know your place, dear. The condescension in his voice sent a chill down her spine, but she refused to back down. I'm Emily, and I'm here to support Nathaniel, not to be looked down upon by you. Nathaniel's eyes flickered with appreciation at her defiance, but Oliver merely laughed, dismissing her with a wave of his hand. Support? That's rich. You might want to reconsider your position before you find yourself on the wrong side of my brother's fortune. Enough, Nathaniel shouted, his voice echoing in the room. I won't let you manipulate me any longer, Oliver. For a brief moment, silence hung in the air, thick with tension and unspoken words, as the three of them stood in an uneasy standoff. Emily felt the weight of the moment pressing down on her, the fragile bond she had begun to build with Nathaniel teetering on the edge of collapse. Oliver's eyes narrowed, a predatory glint flashing within them. Just remember, Nathaniel, family ties can be a double-edged sword. I'll be watching. With that, he turned on his heel and strode from the room, the door closing behind him with a resounding thud. Nathaniel let out a shuddering breath, the tension leaving his body in waves. Emily stepped closer, her heart aching for him. "Are you all right?" she asked softly, placing a hand on his shoulder. "I will be," he replied, though his voice was strained. "But this complicates everything." Emily nodded, understanding the weight of the situation. "We can face this together. Whatever Oliver tries to do, we'll figure it out." Nathaniel looked up at her, and for the first time, she saw a flicker of hope in his eyes. "Thank you, Emily. I don't know what I would do without you." As they stood together in the quiet aftermath of Oliver's visit, Emily felt a renewed sense of determination. The shadows of Nathaniel's past were closing in, but she was resolute in her commitment to help him unearth the truth. Together, they would confront the challenges ahead, even if the path was fraught with danger. Little did they know, the true battle was only just beginning. The atmosphere within the grand mansion had shifted dramatically since Oliver's arrival. It was as if a storm had swept through the pristine halls, leaving an unsettling tension in its wake. Emily could feel in her bones the chill that lingered in the air, thick with unspoken accusations and mistrust. She had been diligently caring for Nathaniel, her heart warming to him with every passing day, but now, under Oliver's piercing gaze, everything felt precarious. As she entered the living room, she found Nathaniel in his wheelchair, his expression a blend of anger and confusion. Oliver stood beside him, arms crossed, a smug smile playing on his lips. The contrast between the two brothers was stark. Nathaniel, with his weary eyes, seemed to be fighting an internal battle, while Oliver radiated a predatory confidence. "Emily, I need to speak to you," Nathaniel said, his voice strained. He looked at her with a mixture of desperation and hurt, as though he was pleading for her to understand the gravity of the situation. "Of course," Emily replied softly, her heart racing. She could sense the weight of Oliver's presence looming over them, a dark shadow threatening to engulf the fragile bond she had been nurturing with Nathaniel. "Just a moment, Nathaniel," Oliver interjected smoothly, turning his attention to Emily. "I think it's important that you understand the truth about your position here." His tone was patronizing, dripping with condescension. "You're not just a caregiver. You're here to take care of his wealth, aren't you?" Emily felt her cheeks flush with indignation. "That's not true. I'm here to help him, to support him." She shot back, her voice steady despite the tremor of uncertainty within her. "Help him, or line your pockets." Oliver raised an eyebrow, the corner of his mouth curling into a smirk. "It's easy to be charmed by a man with money, isn't it?" Nathaniel's expression darkened. "Enough, Oliver," he snapped, his voice suddenly strong, cutting through the tension like a knife. "Emily has been nothing but kind to me. You have no idea what she's done for me." "Oh, but I do," Oliver replied, his smile widening as he leaned closer to Nathaniel. "But tell me, dear brother, could it be that she's only interested in what you can offer her? After all, you're not exactly the catch you used to be." Emily's heart sank at Oliver's words. She felt a deep pang of hurt, a doubt creeping into her mind. Was Nathaniel's vulnerability a mere facade to mask his wealth? Did she really mean anything to him, or was she just another cog in the machine of his life? The thought twisted in her stomach, and she took a step back, wanting to retreat from the venomous atmosphere. "Don't listen to him, Nathaniel," she said, her voice trembling but firm. "I'm here because I care about you, not your money." Oliver laughed, a chilling sound that echoed in the spacious room. "Care? That's rich. You truly think he's capable of love in his condition? He needs you to care for him. Yes, but love? That's a luxury he can't afford." Nathaniel looked between his brother and Emily, torn and pained. "Oliver, please," he said quietly, his voice wavering. "Stop this. You're only trying to sow doubt between us." "Emily." He hesitated, struggling to find the right words. Don't," Emily interrupted, her heart racing. "You don't have to explain anything to him. I don't want to be the cause of conflict between you two." At that moment, a sense of resignation washed over her. Perhaps it would be easier to distance herself, to step away from the emotional turmoil that Oliver had so expertly orchestrated. She took a deep breath, trying to steady herself. "I think I should go. Maybe it's best if I take some time away from here." Nathaniel's eyes widened, a flicker of panic crossing his face. "Emily, no. Please don't leave. I need you," he pleaded, desperation lacing his words. "I can't stay, Nathaniel," she said softly, her heart breaking. "Not when your brother is here, casting shadows over everything. I don't want to be a source of pain for you." Oliver's triumphant smirk deepened as he watched their exchange, a predator savoring the moment of victory. "See, Nathaniel? Even she knows her place. She's just a caregiver, after all. Don't let your feelings cloud your judgment." As Emily turned to leave, a heavy silence fell over the room. The weight of her decision pressed down on her chest, each step away from Nathaniel feeling like a tear in her heart. She could hear Nathaniel's breath quicken behind her, a sound filled with anguish, and it made her pause. "Emily." Nathaniel's voice broke through the stillness, raw and trembling. "Please, just give me a moment. I need to speak to you." She hesitated, her hand resting on the doorframe, torn between the desire to stay and the need to protect herself. Slowly, she turned back, finding Nathaniel's gaze filled with an intensity that both frightened and intrigued her. "Oliver is wrong," he said, his voice low and urgent. "I know he's trying to manipulate me, trying to turn you against me. You mean more to me than just a caregiver. I've felt something real with you, something I haven't felt in years." Tears pricked at the corners of Emily's eyes, and she took a step closer to him, her heart racing. "But what if he's right? What if I'm just a distraction for you? A way to escape the reality of your situation?" Nathaniel shook his head vehemently. "No, Emily. You've brought light into my life. You've made me feel alive again." He paused, his expression pained. "I'm terrified of losing you, especially now when I'm still trying to fight back against the shadows of my past." "Then what do we do?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper, the air thick with unspoken emotions. Nathaniel took a deep breath, his vulnerability laid bare. "We confront this together. I won't let Oliver tear us apart. I need you by my side. I need you to believe in us, even when it's hard." Emily's heart swelled with a mixture of hope and fear. "But how can we do that when he's so determined to push us apart?" Nathaniel's gaze hardened with resolve. "We'll find a way. I won't let him win. I refuse to go back to that dark place without you." As they stood there, the air around them charged with emotion, Emily felt a flicker of hope ignite within her. Perhaps they could navigate this storm together, find a way to overcome the odds that seemed insurmountable. She reached out, taking Nathaniel's hand in hers, feeling the warmth of his touch and the strength in his grip. "I won't abandon you," she vowed. "I'll fight with you." "Then let's do it together," Nathaniel replied, a spark of determination lighting his eyes. In that moment, despite the shadows looming outside, they found solace in their connection, a bond that would serve as their anchor in the tumultuous sea of uncertainty ahead. Emily sat on the edge of Nathaniel's bed, the soft light filtering through the curtains, casting a warm glow on the room. Her heart raced as she held the old, yellowed letter in her trembling hands. The familiar scent of sandalwood mixed with the faint trace of Nathaniel's cologne filled her senses. But today, it was overshadowed by the weight of the revelation she had just stumbled upon. The letter was addressed to Nathaniel in a graceful script, and, as she read the words, her breath quickened. Ollie was driving that night, it said, the words piercing through the fog of confusion that had clouded her mind. "He was drunk, and I should have stopped him. I never thought he would. I never thought he could hurt you." A chill ran down Emily's spine as the implications of the letter sank in. Oliver was responsible for Nathaniel's condition, for the years of pain and isolation that had followed. She felt a surge of anger. It was no longer just about the fractured relationship between the brothers. This was about justice. Without a moment's hesitation, she stood up and made her way to the door, her heart pounding with purpose. She needed to confront Oliver, to expose him for what he truly was. The weight of the letter felt heavy in her pocket, a tangible reminder of the truth she now held. As she descended the grand staircase of the mansion, the air felt electric, charged with the urgency of her mission. Emily's footsteps echoed in the hallway as she reached the study, where she knew Oliver would be. The door was slightly ajar, and she could hear his voice, smooth and condescending, mingling with the sound of Nathaniel's distant reply. Taking a deep breath, she pushed the door open, her heart hammering in her chest. "Oliver," she called out, her voice steady despite her racing heart. Both men turned to face her, surprise etched on their faces. "We need to talk." Oliver raised an eyebrow, a smirk playing on his lips. "Ah, Emily, to what do I owe this unexpected visit?" His tone was mocking, but she could see the flicker of annoyance beneath his facade. "I found something," she replied, her voice unwavering as she stepped further into the room. "Something that changes everything." Nathaniel looked at her with a mixture of confusion and concern. "What is it, Emily?" She withdrew the letter from her pocket and held it up, the paper trembling slightly in her grip. "This," she said, her voice gaining strength. "This letter reveals the truth about what happened the night of the accident." It was Oliver. He was the one behind the wheel. The room fell silent, the weight of her words hanging heavily in the air. Oliver's expression shifted, the smirk faltering as anger washed over his features. "You shouldn't believe everything you read, Emily. That letter is just a piece of paper, nothing more." Emily could feel Nathaniel's eyes on her, searching, pleading. She pressed on, undeterred. "No, it's more than that. It's proof, Nathaniel. Proof that Oliver has manipulated you, that he's been using your vulnerability against you. Get out, Emily." Oliver snapped, his voice low and threatening. "You have no idea what you're talking about." "Actually, I do," she countered, her voice rising. "I know that you've been lying to Nathaniel, that you've been feeding him your twisted version of the truth to keep him from seeing who you really are. You're not the brother he needs. You're a fraud. And what makes you think Nathaniel will believe you over his own flesh and blood?" Oliver's tone was icy, but Emily could see the cracks forming in his confidence. "Because he deserves to know the truth," she replied, stepping closer to Nathaniel, who was watching the exchange with a mixture of disbelief and dawning understanding. "Nathaniel, you've been manipulated for too long. You deserve to reclaim your life, to be free from his shadow." Oliver's face darkened, and he took a step forward, his voice dangerously calm. "You're making a grave mistake, Emily. You think you're helping him, but all you're doing is causing more pain." "No, the pain has already been caused, Oliver," she shot back, standing her ground. "But it's time for the truth to come out, for Nathaniel to see you for who you really are." Nathaniel's expression shifted as he processed her words. "Emily, is this true?" His voice was barely a whisper, filled with disbelief. "It is, Nathaniel. I wouldn't lie to you," she assured him, her heart aching for the turmoil he must be feeling. "You have to confront him. You need to see what he's done." The tension in the room was palpable, and Emily felt the weight of Nathaniel's gaze on her, searching for reassurance. I don't want to believe it," he admitted, his voice cracking. "But if it is true, then you need to take control of your life, Nathaniel," she urged softly. "You can't let him keep you in this prison of fear and manipulation." Oliver scoffed, trying to regain some semblance of authority. "This is absurd. You think you could just waltz in here and turn him against me? I am his brother." "Brotherhood doesn't excuse betrayal," Emily shot back, her voice fierce. "It's time for you to face the consequences of your actions." Nathaniel's expression hardened as he looked at Oliver, his brother's true nature beginning to reveal itself. "What happened that night?" he asked, his voice steadying as he confronted the man who had caused him so much suffering. Oliver hesitated, the bravado fading from his expression. "You don't understand, Nathaniel. It was an accident. I didn't mean for it to happen." "But you did nothing to stop it," Nathaniel replied, his voice gaining strength. "You let it happen. You let me suffer." At that moment, Emily saw a shift in Nathaniel's posture, a flicker of defiance igniting in his eyes. She stepped back, allowing the brothers to confront each other, her heart racing as she witnessed the transformation taking place. "Enough," Oliver shouted, his face contorting with rage. You think you could just turn him against me? I'll make sure you both regret this. Actually, it's you who will regret it, Nathaniel declared, his voice unwavering. I'm done being afraid of you. I'm done letting you control my life. The confrontation escalated, and within moments, the door burst open as a couple of security personnel entered, alerted by the commotion. Emily felt a sense of relief wash over her as she realized that justice was about to be served. Mr. Oliver, we have received reports of suspicious activity, one of the guards announced, stepping forward. You're under arrest for fraud and manipulation. What? This is ridiculous. Oliver shouted, but the guards moved swiftly, cuffing him and leading him away. Emily turned to Nathaniel, her heart swelling with pride for his newfound strength. You did it, Nathaniel. You stood up for yourself. He looked at her, the weight of the world lifting from his shoulders. I couldn't have done it without you, Emily. Thank you for believing in me. As the tension began to dissipate, Emily felt a warmth spreading through her chest. In that moment, surrounded by the chaos of the confrontation, she realized that their bond had transformed into something deeper, something worth fighting for. With Oliver gone, Nathaniel took a deep breath, his eyes bright with determination. It's time for me to start living again, Emily. I want to embrace my future, and I want you to be a part of it. In that moment, amidst the ruins of betrayal, a new chapter began to unfold. They stood together, united against the shadows of the past, ready to face whatever the future held. The air buzzed with hope, and as they moved towards the gallery, the beauty of life around them mirrored the promise of their new beginning.